Hey everybody, hope you guys are doing well. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to start your Balsa Bridge using Onshape. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is to create a new document. So we're going to go up to the blue button here and select document. And you're going to want to name your document. So we're going to call it Balsa Bridge underscore your last name. I'm going to call it example 1. Okay. And then while it's loading, the next thing you're going to want to do is you are going to want to select your plane that you're going to use and create a sketch on it. So we're going to use the front work plane and we're going to create a sketch. Before I start drawing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the other two work planes because I don't need them right now. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the top and I'm going to hide the right. And I'm just going to focus on the front. So I'm going to switch my view cube so I can see the front straight on. And then I'm going to draw a horizontal line, selecting the line tool, and I'm going to draw it right through. Now, the key here is that you draw one single line through the origin horizontally. And right now, I'm not worried about the dimensions. And this line is going to represent my base. Now, I know the base of my bridge is 10 inches. So what I want to do is I want to make it symmetrical. In order to do that, I'm going to select the dimension tool and I'm going to dimension each half of the bridge or each half of the base one at a time. And then in total, it'll equal 10 inches. So I'm going to select the endpoint and then select the origin point and drag down. Try that one more time. Sorry about that. You really got to make sure you select the point and not the line. That's what I did wrong. And so I'll click and then I'll make it 5 inches and hit enter. Then I'm going to do the other endpoint. And then again, making sure I'm selecting the origin point, not the line, and drag down. Okay, so now my total is 10, 5 and 5 is 10. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my line tool again, and I'm going to select construction. And I'm going to go to my origin point, click, and draw a horizontal line straight up. Again, I'm not worrying about how tall this is right now. We'll come back to that later. But we're going to use it as a line of symmetry, and this is going to help us later on. So I'm going to escape that line as well. And now I'm ready to draw the top of my bridge. And again, remember, we're drawing this as a profile. We're drawing it just from one side right now. We will make the other side later. So again, I'm going to draw my line or select my line tool. And I'm going to go ahead and again, and this time I'm going to put it through the top of my construction line through that top point. And again, I want to make it one continuous line, not two separate lines. Now, this is where it's going to differ between what I'm showing you in this example versus what you might have on your drawing. So my top line might be different than yours. So you need to follow the dimensions that you recorded on your paper. So I know that my top of my bridge is 8 1/4 inches. So I am again going to cut that in half. So that means I'm going to do 4 1/8 on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension, clicking the endpoint, clicking the midpoint here, and this time I'll just drag up, and I'm going to make it 4.125. And then do the same thing on the other side. Make it 4.125. And there is the length of the top of my bridge. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the green check mark to close the sketch. And I'm going to select isometric view. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make these two lines here become three-dimensional. And instead of using extrude like we've done before, what I'm going to do is use a tool called the frame tool. So the frame tool is up here on the toolbar. If you kind of go to the right side, most likely to the right side of your toolbar here is the frame tool. So I'm going to click on that once. And now I'm going to select my two lines, my base and my top. 1, 2. And now what I need to do is to ensure that I have the right type of bars. So I'm going to select rectangular bar, and you're going to want to make sure what yours might be defaulting to is this 80/20 series. So it might look something like this. So what you want to make sure of is you want to go to ANSI, and then you're going to click in the size dimensions, and you're going to type in 0.125. And it should come up 0.125 by 0.125. And you're going to click on that once to select it. And then you must select generate. And then it will apply the dimension accurately, because what we've created is now the length of our lines that or the bases that we want and the top that we want. But now we had to make the bars three-dimensional, and we know they're an eighth by an eighth, which is 0.125 by 0.125. And so once we have that, we're going to select done, and then we're going to select the green check mark. And there are our base and our top. So now I'm going to come over here to the parts underneath our features bar here, and you'll notice it says part 1 and part 2. So I want to name that. So notice if I hover over part 1, that is my base. So I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to select rename, and I'm going to call this one my base. If you want to call it bottom, that's fine. And then I'm going to go to my part 2, and notice it's highlighting my top. So now I'm going to right click and rename that and call it top. Now I'm ready to go ahead and start putting in my angled pieces or my vertical pieces. So I'm going to want to create a sketch, and I'm going to go ahead and choose my front again. And again, I'm going to go back to my front view. Now, what I'm going to do again is I'm going to put a horizontal construction line in the middle, just like I did before. This time it doesn't need to be attached to our part. It can be, it doesn't have to be. It's just, we're going to use it as a line of symmetry. And that will also help us to not have to duplicate all the lines, because if you design your bridge correctly, whatever you do on this side of your profile of your bridge should be the same on this side of the profile of the bridge. So I know I have an angled line coming up here. So now I'm ready to select the line tool, and I'll zoom in here, and I'm going to go ahead and draw that line. I'm not going to put the line right on the corner. And notice if I hover right in the middle, it gives me that dash line. I don't want that either. I want to put this line slightly above, and I'm going to draw it at a diagonal, again, slightly above. Okay, so notice right now that angled line is not touching my bars. We're going to make it do that, but we're going to do that using what's called the coincident constraint tool. So just to the right of the dimension tool is a toolbar called the constraint toolbar. And so there's a little down arrow that gives you all sorts of constraints. The first one is usually coincident. If you need to select coincident from the drop down, just hit that little down arrow, but it's coincident is the one we want. So we want to activate that. And then now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and I'm going to select the end point of my line, and now the top edge of my base. Okay, And what that does is it now places that line and the end point of that line on top of the base of uh, my drawing here. And so now I know that they're touching. Now I also need to start dimensioning before I make them three-dimensional. So what I need to do is refer back to my drawing to understand, okay, well, how long is this line? What are the angles do I need? And where does it get placed? So I know that this line is actually goes closer to the corner, but I can't put this endpoint all the way on the corner because if right now this line is representing the middle of the bar, okay? So that means if I know the width of the bar is 1/8, that means that on each side of this line is 1/16 of an inch. So therefore, I'm going to place this a little bit inside. So I'm going to select the dimension tool. I'm now going to select the corner, and then I'm going to select my endpoint, and I'm going to dimension that to 0.0625, which equates to 1/16 of an inch. Hit enter. And now it moved that endpoint over. And the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure I have the right angle measurement. So this time I'm going to select my angled line. I'm now going to select the top of my base, and that will give me an angle. And I know this angle is 65 degrees based on the measurements that I took earlier. So now I have the right angle that I'm looking for. And so now I can just go ahead and now select coincident constraint. And I'm going to go ahead and select the endpoint and now the underside of the top part. And now that ensures that I have the right length and the right angle. And so now I'm going to go ahead and add my next line in. Again, I'm going to draw that line close to the top, but not perfect, and angle it back down close to my base, but not perfect. Right click, escape line. And again, use my coincident. Okay, so now it's touching. And then again, I'm going to make it 65 degrees. Okay, now I need to place a distance between these two endpoints. So I'm going to select this endpoint. I'm going to select this endpoint, drag up a little bit. Got to make sure I get it right here. And you want to make sure it's straight. They're very close together. That's why it's kind of angling like that. There we go. Okay, so how far do I want them apart? I want them to be about 1/8 of an inch apart. So that way, again, that they're not overlapping. See how close they are right now? That would not work. That once I made them three-dimensional, they would overlap. So I'm going to go ahead and make this 0.125. Okay, and that should be good. And now I'll make it coincident. Let's see if that works. Okay, so now there should be enough space. And if I needed to widen it out, I would just have to edit this dimension. Okay, so I'm going to do one more angled line. Again, same thing. Kind of back up this direction. This is, again, this is my pattern. If your pattern is different, then you're going to have a different design here. So if you were to have a vertical line in between these two, that's perfectly fine. You can have that vertical line there. But you would need to create a little more space in between, because then you'd have the thickness of this line, the thickness of this line, and a thickness of a vertical line, so all being 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and make this coincident. Okay, so I know that's now touching. I'm going to go ahead and get my angle. That's 65. And notice I'm making all the angles the same. And again, I want my distance in between here to be about 1/8 of an inch. So now I'll zoom back out. Okay, and then make the endpoint here coincident. Okay, last but not least, I know I have a vertical line that I'm going to place in here. And I'm going to place it, for now, right about here. This is, again, my design. And I'm going to make the endpoint coincident. So a lot of repetition. And I'm going to make this endpoint coincident. Okay, because I know that's the height. I don't really need to change that too much. But now I want the distance between these two. So I'm going to click on the dimension tool. Create my distance here. Okay, and let's see. I believe it's 0.5. Okay. All right. So now, if you notice, I have the lines that I want. Again, your pattern might be different than mine. This is my drawing, and so you might have a slightly different pattern than what I have. Not a problem. You should do the one that you've designed, not the one that I'm showing you. But the methodology on what I'm doing and showing you is the same. So instead of redrawing all these lines again, just like I've done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mirror tool in Sketch. And what it's going to allow me to do is copy these lines so I don't have to remeasure them all and put it on the other side of my bridge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select mirror. That's this tool right here. And then you're going to select a mirror line. And that's going to be that line of symmetry that we put in earlier, that little construction line, because you're telling it where to go over. And then it wants to know which lines do you want to mirror. In this case, I want my angled line, my 3 angled lines here, and then my vertical line. And notice they got placed on the other side. So I've gone ahead and now mirrored everything over. So I'll turn that tool off. And now I'm ready to go ahead and finish my sketch. And now I'm going to add in my second frame, or my second set of frames. So I'm going to go ahead and select the frame tool again. And now I'm going to select the lines. Now, I was able to select all the lines. If for whatever reason you're not able to select all the lines, it doesn't work, then you might have to do 2 sets of frames. So maybe do the angled lines first and then the vertical lines. It just depends. Now, the next thing I want to show you is after I selected all those lines, it's giving me kind of a preview of what the lines currently look like. But notice, see how they're angled and they're flat on top. We want them so that they are underneath and angled correctly to the top and the bottom of our bridge. So to do that, what you're going to do, I'll go back to isometric view here, is in the little frame window, what you're going to do is you're going to come down to the bottom and you're going to select limit frame ends. Then you're going to select the top surface of your base, and then you're going to have to rotate it underneath to the bottom surface of the top. And now, once I've done that, and I select front, notice now all the angles are correct. And then I'm just going to go ahead and hit the check mark. And as you can see now, I have a frame, my frame of my profile of my bridge. But obviously, we want 2 sides. So what I'm going to do now is I need to add in my connecting pieces. So there's a couple different ways you could do this. You could do that in an assembly. You could build a separate piece and then assemble it to this. Or we can go ahead and add it in now. So that's what I'll do. So I'm going to go ahead and create another sketch. And this time I'm going to create my sketch on the outside of my top. So on this surface here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want my connecting pieces, they're going to go back. They're going to kind of go towards the depth, okay? And so now I have to add in these pieces. And so I'm going to draw them as rectangles. So again, I'm going to start with a line of symmetry. So I only have to do so many squares. So I'm going to select my line, select my construction, and again, use my kind of my midpoint here as just a line of symmetry. So that's why it doesn't need to go all the way to the top or bottom. So right click, escape. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the corner rectangle tool, and you should have planned out how many connecting pieces you're going to have. I probably recommended to you probably maybe 4 on the top and 4 or 5 on the bottom. So it's really up to you. I do recommend that the ones that are on top are near the middle. So that way the plate, when we test the bridge, has something to rest on top of. So I'm going to kind of place them here, and you can always adjust them. So I'm going to draw a square here and then another one here. And I'm going to dimension all these, but I'm just going to draw them in for now. Okay. And notice I'm putting them in between my frame here. And so what I need to do now is dimension the square to 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to select the top edge and make it 0.125. And then I need to do the height also 0.125 because that's 1/8 by 1/8. Okay, and I'm going to do that for all of the other squares as well. So now that I have all of the squares dimensioned to 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch, I'm also now going to mirror them over to the other side. So just as I did before, I'm going to, this time what I'm going to do first is I'm going to highlight all of them by left clicking and dragging over all the squares. So notice now they're all highlighted. Now I'm going to select the mirror tool. Now I'm going to select my mirror line, and I've already gone ahead and selected them all. That way I don't have to select each individual line, and notice it mirrored them over to the other side. Turn off my mirror tool, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch. Now, what I'm going to do, go back to isometric view, and now I'm going to extrude each one of these squares. So I'm going to click extrude. Now, the distance across that you might want, if you want it to be, depending on how wide your bridge is, remember I said probably only about 1 to 2 inches. So I'm going to make it, I'm going to plan for 2 inches. So I'm going to make each one of these 1. So I'm going to keep my depth as 1. And now I'm going to select each square one at a time. 2, there. Okay, now they're all pointing in the wrong direction, so I got to flip them to the other side. So now it's pointing to the other side. Now again, why am I doing half? Because I'm also going to mirror my bridge, so that way I don't have to build both sides. So now that I have the dimensions that I want, the size of those connecting pieces, I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch, or my extrusion, I should say. And now I've applied those. Go back to isometric view. And now I'm ready to mirror my bridge to the other side. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and select the mirror tool. And it wants to know what entities I want to mirror. So I want all of them. So again, I'm going to select by dragging over my entire bridge. That selects everything. Now I want to select the mirror plane. So I go over to my mirror window here, select the red box that says mirror plane. And then I'm going to rotate my view. And I want to select one of my connecting pieces, this flat surface on the end of one of the connecting pieces. Once I do that, it now reflects over that axis to the other side all of my geometry that I created from the front side or the profile of my bridge. And then I go ahead and click check. And then go back to isometric view. And there is my bridge. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the front because we no longer need that. So now I can see my bridge fully and clearly. And there is my bridge. So hopefully that will help you as you start to design and construct your own bridge. Remember to follow your plan. Don't copy my bridge, but you can definitely copy the methodology on how to create the angles, how to create the frames, and then how to mirror to create the other half of your bridge. If you have any questions, please let me know.